long-time friends and new visitors to our channel, Jean Truelove Quilts for You. This is Ian Truelove with a vintage edition of Tours of Your Sewing Rooms. And in this, we're going to have a special shout out to all those supportive husbands who add their handiworks in these quilt room, these sewing rooms. As we mentioned, vintage, we live in a vintage house, and so we're going to bring in a mention of our 100-year-old plus house here where we live. I'm refurbishing 2 garage entrance coach lamps. They're leaded light stained glass a la Tiffany style, and they weren't working when we moved here, so I'm busily getting them to work. One I'm going to have to completely rewire, and one I've managed to get to work, and I have it wired to or through a one of these on-off through your phone switching mechanisms. I don't want to name the actual product, so I'm sure you understand what I mean. So we're going to make a short recounting of what is really a quilting life story from Gloria D-U-Y. I don't know how to pronounce that. How would you pronounce it, Jean?
Doi?
Doi?
Or was it Guy?
D-U-Y.
D-U-Y, Doi. Doi?
Doi?
Die?
Die? Anyway, Gloria, please forgive us for mispronouncing your name if we're doing that. So, this email that we've received focuses around vintage. So here goes, listening to Gloria's email. She says, my husband and I retired to a 1965 stone ranch, and my vintage sewing room is in a small nursery bedroom. I call it vintage because I have a love for vintage fabric, lace, buttons, notions and things. My room is tiny, only about 10 foot by 11, but I managed to house a lot of things in there without it feeling crowded to me. I also keep all my vintage collectibles in there. My handle on YouTube is Poodle Girl 55, and if you look around my room closely you will see why. The way it's been arranged and all the work that's gone into it is very much in line with what I like.
And what we like.
What we like,
we
yes.
We are maximalists, and obviously Gloria is also. And to us, it was a feast for our eyes to see all of this. It's just so interesting. So what I'm going to do, actually, before I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to be putting the pictures up now as little snippets, but at the very end of your video, you're just doing one sewing room tour today. At the end of your video, I'm going to put up the pictures for a longer time so people can actually see all of Gloria's beautiful works of art in just stills at the very end.
Very good.
Yeah.
Gloria says, I have a Pfaff, Elna and Baby Lock sewing machines, and I use them all. I only have 2 tables, so I have to rotate, but they all have their purpose. I quilt, make home decor, clothing and accessories. I also am completely crochet crazy and do lots of embroidery. I am a self-taught quilter and do a lot of hand stitching. I've learned a lot of techniques from Jean over the years. So have I. Thank you, Gloria, for a shout out to my Jean. Gloria continues, my mother had some vintage family quilts she wanted to hand down, but she passed away when I was a child, and her things went hither and yon. That's sad.
Mm.
As a newlywed living in a Victorian house, that's like us. Although we're not newlyweds anyway. She says, as a newlywed living in a Victorian house, I longed for old quilts, but they were out of my budget. I scouted yard sales and flea markets and found some damaged quilts and some unfinished ones, and that began my love for vintage. Because of course I also found vintage fabrics so I could repair quilts. I started making yo-yo quilts and grandmother's flower gardens out of vintage fabrics. In picture number 2, the oak shelf with cubbies houses my yarn and fat quarters. My new fabric is below. Picture 3 shows lace that I make and use in my journal making and upcycling clothing and is above my bookshelf. Picture 4 shows some of my crochet, and I store supplies in the little closet behind the mirrored door. And when I saw that photograph with all the superb colour scheme and decor and handicrafts, seeing it mirrored in those doors is just a picture in itself. It really is artwork. Picture 5, Gloria says, is all of my furniture, and it was second hand, and I painted it. This cabinet houses my journals, scrolls, crochet and lace I make along with collectibles. The bottom stores fabric. Picture 6. I have no room for a table, so I put 4 cubes together and added a top and some wheels, and it makes a nice counter that can be moved. I can even iron on it with a wall mat. I have 4 metal carts for my supplies. 2 are in the closet and I can switch them around. Having everything on wheels really helps the room be workable. Picture 7 is a close-up of some of my vintage fabric. It looks wonderful. I was looking at some of that in detail. Gloria says, thank you for looking at my sewing room. People who visit say it looks like a little shop, and we certainly agree with that. Gloria says, I enjoy hunting for my vintage materials and constantly curating my collections as I bring them home and as I use them. Thanks for listening and watching from Gloria D-U-Y.
D-U-Y.
I'm an Englishman. Where does that name come from? It's very unusual, but attractive. Gloria Dui? Thank you.
It?
That's it.
Oh.
And all of that is in our vintage edition of Tours of Your Sewing Rooms.
And if you want to.
And if you want to.
Send in.
Of course, my director says, and if you want to send in descriptions like this, which is wonderful to read, thank you Gloria, descriptions similar to this, even almost like a life story with excellent photographs, we love to receive them and share them on the channel. Thank you folks. Ian Truelove, Jean Truelove Quilts for you.
Thank you, Ian. That was good.